Welcome, dear listeners, to another enlightening episode of The Genetic Genius. I'm your host, Dr. LuLu, and today's exploration promises to be nothing short of revolutionary. Our episode title encapsulates the essence of what's to come: the Polysaccharide Revolution, Redefining Nutritional Health. In our ongoing quest to uncover the secrets of well-being, we have the distinct honor of being joined by a true luminary in the field. Our esteemed guest today is none other than Dr. John E. Lewis, founder and president of Dr. Lewis Nutrition. Dr. Lewis isn't just a distinguished academic, he's also a past full-time and current voluntary associate professor in the Department of Psychiatry and Behavioral Sciences at the University of Miami Miller School of Medicine. Moreover, he holds the prestigious titles of diplomat, faculty member, and advisor of the Medical Wellness Association. With a career that has spanned over countless research studies and clinical trials, Dr. Lewis has been at the forefront of exploring the profound impact of nutrition, dietary supplementation, exercise, and medical devices on human health and disease. His work has not only been instrumental in securing over 23 million in grants for research studies, clinical trials, and educational programs for medical students, but has also resulted in the publication of more than 180 peer-reviewed articles in esteemed scientific journals. But Dr. Lewis is more than just an accomplished scientist. He's a beacon of inspiration for those seeking a path to lasting health and vitality. His passion for health and wellness extends beyond the lab, as he shares his insights as an invited national and international lecturer, guest speaker at conferences and workshops, and even a sought-after expert on television shows. What sets Dr. Lewis apart is not only his wealth of knowledge, but also his unwavering commitment to practicing what he preaches. For over 26 years, he has embraced a whole food, plant-based diet, bolstered by carefully chosen dietary supplements, all the while maintaining a rigorous dietary or daily exercise regime. His mission is clear: to educate and empower others to recognize the profound value of nutrition, exercise, and overall health in their lives. Today, we embark on a journey of discovery into the realm of polysaccharides, nutrition, and the remarkable insights brought to us by our esteemed guest, Dr. John E. Lewis. So welcome to the Polysaccharide Revolution, Redefining Nutritional Health. Brace yourselves for an episode that has the power to reshape your approach to wellness. Stay tuned. So welcome, Dr. Lewis.
Thank you, Dr. LuLu. It's my pleasure to be here. I'm really glad and grateful for you to invite me on your show and have a great conversation today.
Yay, me too. Before we dive deep into the world of polysaccharides, which I can't wait, but I'd love for you to introduce yourself to our listeners and talk a little bit about your inspiration, a little bit behind, which we're going to dive more into, of course, in the show. But I'd love for listeners to tune in and feel your inspiration and what makes you tick.
Sure, I'd be happy to. I'm the kind of person who really believes in credibility in terms of doing what you say, not doing what you do and then telling somebody else to do something else. Like, I'm all about credibility and not being a hypocrite. So for me, I think it's very important for any of us who lives in the world of, let's say, the broad umbrella of health and wellness. And then, of course, in my world, in dietary supplements, I think that's just so important. You can't tell people one thing and then do something else. It's so important to have face validity and credibility and just being true to yourself, because ultimately, if you're out lying and telling things that you don't believe in or that you don't do for yourself, eventually you'll be exposed as a fraud, and then whatever credibility you may have had prior to that will be completely lost. So for me, just because that's really more of a personal mantra as opposed to how I really feel about a business perspective or strategy. I think for me personally, it's just important to be true to who you are and what you believe in, and then I think out of that, people will naturally gravitate toward that. So people know me as being somebody who really values health. And for me, it's just so important. You can have all the money in the world or all the toys, cars, homes, jewelry, clothing, whatever. But if your health is not good, if you're not living an optimally healthy life, what do all those personal possessions matter? So for me, health is my number one pursuit, I guess you could say. Sometimes people think, oh, I'm interested in being happy. I guess that's okay. I think happiness is one of those fleeting emotions that come and go depending on what punch you take in the gut when you wake up that day. So I don't know that pursuit of happiness is such a thing that I necessarily advocate for, but The thing that you can control is what you put in your mouth and how you move your body every day. That's all about health. And then after beyond that, it's really then how you live your life and trying to help other people. And I think for those of us, again, in the health and wellness field or industry, it's, as you well know better than me, there are a lot of people out there espousing different strategies to achieve health. So what does that mean? Whether it's diet or supplements or exercise, there's so much controversy and so much debate. Just look recently at this carnivore diet movement. I find that very fascinating. I don't even want to talk about that today, but
we won't go down that road.
No, but I find that whole movement to be a bit preposterous. But again, that's another story. So you asked me what what makes me tick. For me, it's about being healthy and helping people be healthy. And I think most people don't understand that it's really not, shall we say, performing brain surgery or sending people to Mars or anything so technically sophisticated. I feel like we have enough information already. Of course, there are lots of questions to be answered and lots of research that remains to be conducted. But what we already know about nutrition and supplementation and exercise and how that all affects our genes and our cells, man, we have so much information already. If you're still lost, if you still don't know what to do, I'm sorry, you haven't been doing a good job of really diving into that information and then applying it, because it's really not that difficult. And you don't have to be a biochemist or a physiologist or a physician or a naturopath or anything else to be healthy. You just have to know a few things and then apply them and be consistent. And that's really what it comes down to, is, again, helping people understand some of these things that I've been fortunate to learn, and what my path has been in life, and why I chose health at a very young age to be one of my primary pursuits. And then just being a beacon or a model, if you will, of helping to educate people. And also at the same time, I'd like to clarify that I also don't consider myself to be the Mecca of all knowledge when it comes to nutrition. I think
You're not?
No, I'm not. I'm definitely not. And I feel like anyone who claims to know everything about the field of nutritional science, again, that's not
possible.
It's not possible. There just literally are not enough hours in the day, years in your life to know everything about all the different funnels or buckets of nutritional science. It's impossible. So I've pretty much chosen to stay in my lane in polysaccharides because it's an opportunity to talk about something that's very unique. It's not vitamin C, it's not vitamin D, it's not fiber, it's not calcium, not something that a lot of people know a lot about. It's something that not a lot of people know a lot about, and it's unique, and it's potentially very amazing for people once they just peel that one layer of the onion back and say, wow, what's this polysaccharide thing? And then just allow themselves to be open-minded to understand the benefits that certain plants that Mother Nature has provided for us that can be so beneficial to health. So I like staying in my lane. I wish I had the capacity to really be an expert in other areas, but for me, it comes down to my dietary preference, eating a plant-based diet for the last 26 years, supplementing with these polysaccharides, and then being another unicorn, if you will, of being a drug-free competitive bodybuilder type who combines the plant-based eating with bodybuilding. And I know that may be strange to people as well, but it's just what I love to do, and the type of exercise that my body resonates with and I really enjoy. So I'm a bit of a strange character, if you will, about all of my different unique interests, but I enjoy it because, again, it's an opportunity to be somebody that is unique and not just another whatever kind of peddling the same messages or message.
Right. Yeah. Thank you, Dr. John. That was really enlightening. I really appreciate your integrity component. I think that's really a huge piece of what makes us stand out as alternative health practitioners. And because there is a lot of information in the world and it's at our fingertips, so to speak, but it's not always information that's true. And I think when people can see that there's practitioners like yourself and myself that are really behind something, right, that we believe in, and that's what makes a difference. And I love that we're going to be talking about polysaccharides today, because it is a different type of aspect that's not maybe mainstream, so to speak.
Right.
And that's what helps people to learn more. And I like also what you said too about being empowered taking charge of your own health, right? And you do have the tools out there, listeners. They're available, and it's about building the foundations of health, right? And they can be super easy. Sean was talking about when you use the knowledge out there, it's about really just being committed. Yes.
Well,
Which
when you think
sometimes
about
is the
any type
hardest.
of,
Go ahead.
I'm sorry,
No,
I'm
go
sorry,
ahead.
I was just going to say, when you think about exercise training, particularly, two really key principles in my view of exercise and how it benefits us is you have to be consistent, and then you have to achieve a certain level of intensity. If you do both of those things day after day over time, you will get benefits from exercise training. I don't care if you're a swimmer, bodybuilding, walker, runner, tennis, whatever your activity is, that to me is irrelevant, but it's about consistency and achieving a level of intensity that will cause the body to adapt. Those to me are the two most important principles for exercise.
Yeah, so important. I totally agree. I just recently been taking up golf. Not that it's like a high cardio, but it's
Oh, wow.
very, I do other cardio, but it's very skilled. Like it takes a lot of
Absolutely.
concentration in specific parts of my body. It's been a real interesting kind of mental shift for me because, okay, I got this piece and that piece. I'm going to hold it this way and do that. So it's a good challenge for me, I think, to get out of because running is what I usually do. And running for me, it's just so easy. And it really helps me get out of my brain. But golf, feel like I'm like all in my brain, like trying to remember all the pieces. But I'm sure it'll get a little bit better and easier as I become more skilled.
Absolutely.
Yes.
By the way, I should say that you and I didn't choose to both wear a purple shirt today. That just happened.
That's right. We didn't tune in to each other and say, "Hey," I know it's a good color. It must be good for
That's right.
the season. So let's talk a little bit about polysaccharide. So can you explain what a polysaccharide is? Let's start with that scientific aspect, and then let's talk about. I'll have some more questions after that, but let's start at the basics. Like, what is a polysaccharide?
Great question. And I agree with you. That's exactly the place to start from. Unfortunately, as well as I do, we have been so brainwashed or so just pounded about this message of sugar in the media, right? We hear the word sugar and we think bad. It's, oh my God, we can't have sugar. Bad. Sugar is bad. But polysaccharides are a type of sugar. I could have said complex sugars. And if I said to you, guess what? Complex sugars are good for you. Probably 75, maybe 90% of your listeners would have said, my God, that guy Lewis is a nut. They wouldn't even take me seriously. But sugars have two very important components, at least, that differentiate them. And one is, of course, their molecular structure, how many carbon bonds they have, and that guides what we call either a monosaccharide, a simple sugar, a disaccharide, a little bit more complex sugar, or then a poly or oligosaccharide, which are the most complex sugars, which have just incredibly dense structures that cannot be even entirely graphically categorized. They're almost like 5D structures in a way, if you will. And then, of course, the other major component is the source. So if we're talking about high fructose corn syrup from processed corn, of course, then that's obviously right, exactly, a very simple sugar that spikes our blood glucose. It has a very high glycemic index, all these other things that drive our insulin, et cetera, and we don't have to go down that road. So if you're talking about those very simple sugars that are processed for sweeteners, by all means, we want everybody to limit those, if not eliminate those as much as possible. But again, that is a far different animal, or plant, I should say, not to be too silly about this, than the polysaccharides or the complex sugars that come from where I've really studied a lot in my career, mostly the aloe vera and then also the rice bran. And so these two particular plants, the rice plant and the aloe vera, provide human beings with these complex sugars that, again, are just so dense. They're so biochemically dense and complex that they contain so much coded information for them. And that's the reason why I've just seen time and time again in almost now 20 years of working with these materials, how they help people achieve health. And also, I guess we should say, just for clarity's sake here, and just to be completely transparent, we're not, anything that I talk about in my research or maybe any anecdotal report of a customer or a client, I'm not talking about treating disease here at all, right? This is not a show for us to talk about using nutrition to treat disease. I want to make sure the FTC is very clear about this. We're talking about providing the raw materials that the body needs for the cells to function properly that are guided by our genes. That is a far different paradigm than treating disease with synthetic chemicals.
Right,
So this is
exactly.
not treating, this is not treating disease at all. I want us, everybody, that anytime anyone ever hears me talk about this stuff, I always make sure that this disclaimer is said. And I'm sorry I should have said that initially,
It's okay.
but I just want to make sure we're very clear about we're not treating disease here. So again,
Mhm.
these polysaccharides are just, Dr. Lulu, they're so amazing. And the first time, or when I bring up the term aloe or the plant aloe vera, most people think of aloe vera in the topical context, right?
For burns.
Exactly. For a sunburn, a cut, a wound, or something like that, you take your aloe vera gel out of the bottle, you put it on your skin, and then it'll heal over time. And
Right.
that's certainly a fine use for aloe vera gel. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that. But the aloe vera gel is 98.5, 99% water. So to get a therapeutic benefit of the polysaccharide content in that gel because a lot of times people ask me, can I not just drink the aloe vera gel? Again, you can do that, but you're really wasting your money, wasting your effort, thinking you want to get a therapeutic benefit out of that gel orally.
Hmm.
When you extract out the polysaccharides, and by the way, there aren't just polysaccharides in that gel, there are many different nutrients and phytonutrients.
Hmm.
But when you get a pure extract of those polysaccharides, the ace-mannan, the acetylated polymannose, it goes by several different synonyms. Man, you're getting just such an amazing substance, and I would argue that that aloe vera plant is just about the most special plant that Mother Nature has provided for humanity to achieve health, and not only to achieve health, but when you're dealing with a health challenge, to actually help the body combat that and restore to homeostasis and repair and heal itself. So these polysaccharides are just amazing. And the second thought to that is, it doesn't matter if you're vegan or carnivore or keto or paleo or zone or Atkins or South Beach, whatever your diet is, you don't get these polysaccharides from the diet. Now, if you eat brown rice every day, you're probably getting a little bit of the polysaccharide content from the rice bran from eating brown rice. You're getting none of it if you eat white rice. The rice bran has been stripped off the kernel to produce white rice, which is what about 70-80% of the world prefers to eat. They end up
Right.
throwing rice bran away. They either throw it away or it gets fed to livestock, which is just a tragedy to me. But again, these two plants, I would argue, and I know that there are many mushrooms out there, and I'm not an expert on mushrooms like reishi and shiitake and maitake and tiger tail and lion's mane and all those. I know those have very good polysaccharide content in them as well. I would argue, based on, again, my work for nearly the last 20 years, I would put the aloe vera and the rice bran up against just about anything else. So these polysaccharides come from very specific plants, and you really have to go out of your way to get them. Unfortunately, it's just not as common as getting nutrition from, say, a banana or an apple or a baked potato or something like that. It just, unfortunately, it's not working that way for us. But we have a lot of research behind this from my prior academic career that I'm no longer full-time in. And in fact, we're still producing our scientific peer-reviewed articles from that research. In fact, we just got another article accepted for publication a couple of weeks ago. We can talk about that later if you like. But anyway, I'm sorry if I've been too long-winded in describing.
No, you're fine.
And,
no, it's great.
Yeah, that was saccharides.
Yeah, it's a great explanation. And one piece of that, can you explain the difference for our listeners between aloe vera gel and aloe vera juice?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, excuse me, the aloe vera gel, when it's in its raw form, when you're just basically cutting a leaf off the plant, it contains aloin and latex material in it and things that would actually cause us to have, if we ate that pure gel, if you ate too much of it, you'd probably end up with a bit of diarrhea. So the drink that you see on the shelf in not the frozen section, of course, but the refrigerated section, that's going to be purified to an extent. So it's going to have, first of all, it's going to have that aloin extracted out of it, so you don't get the poops. And then second of all, it's going to be not nearly as pure of a product as the original gel. So it'll be, let's call it a winnowed down version of the gel. It's still obviously a water product,
right?
But it'll have some of the nutritional content in it. It certainly won't have enough polysaccharide in it for any therapeutic content. It'll just have a little bit of polysaccharide combined with some of the other amino acids, essential fatty acids, a little bit of vitamin and mineral content in it. But it will, again, I don't want to knock anyone else's products. I think they're okay, but really for true therapeutic impact, I think those aloe vera juice drinks are limited at best. If you like the taste of it, That's fine. That's obviously
Right.
better than drinking a soda or something.
Yes, we
But
don't condone that on this show for sure. Yeah,
right,
no,
exactly.
no, thank you. I just wanted to help the listeners understand, because that's something they might see commonly at the store, right? When they're
Sure.
going to the health food store. And we talked about what the topical use is. Okay. So as we're talking here about the polysaccharides, we're talking about the aloe vera and the rice bran and how they're game changers for nutritional health. And we're going to be talking more about what they can be used for specifically. And I'd love for you to share briefly about some of the most compelling kind of findings from your research, and specifically in the context of Alzheimer's, because I think this is the focus of the brain is for me so important. And I know that especially the women listeners out there are always trying to find ways to up their brain, their focus, their cognition and memory. So if you could talk a little bit about that would be great.
Thank you. And I appreciate you specifically mentioning Alzheimer's, because for me, that is the highlight of my academic research to this point in my life. And I'm guessing if any of your listeners have had either a family member or a close friend, someone with either Alzheimer's or another form of dementia, it's just what a horrible, horrific
Yeah.
disease. It is the worst. I think it's worse than other forms of cancer that are obviously very tragic. And then certainly different types of diseases that take a toll on people are
Mm-hmm.
obviously just terrible as well. But for me, in my opinion, I have yet to see anything as tragic and horrific as Alzheimer's. So we took our polysaccharide based formula that contains both the aloe vera and the rice bran in it, and we actually, let me say it this way. So, a lot of times, again, when we think of research, we have this idea of finding the magic bullet, right?
Mm-hmm.
We always want to look for that one thing
Right.
that will be like the difference maker. My colleagues and I should say my mentor, Dr. Reg McDaniel, who, by the way, I didn't really even give any credit to yet, the person who got me into this whole area. He just an amazing gentleman, still going to his office every day in his upper 80s today, and just still looking for more research or more money to do research, still fighting the good fight. But Dr. Reg and I, when we were talking about this formula in the early days, the idea was to have something that would provide it. I like to use the analogy of the difference between a shotgun and a rifle, or a sniper rifle. So a shotgun is the nutritional approach.
Mm-hmm.
It's spreading out hundreds, if not thousands of things to the cells at the same time, because that's the way our cells function. Whereas the sniper rifle is exactly the pharmacology model that is taking one synthetic chemical, looking at how it affects one metabolic pathway for one symptom of a disease. It's a very specific, narrow approach. And we didn't
Right.
want to do that. We weren't looking for magic bullets. We were looking for a formulation that could help people with this terrible disease. And we actually had a family member, 4 people that had died of Alzheimer's, who heard Dr. McDaniel giving a lecture one time. And that was the only reason, Dr. LuLu, we even had funding to do this study. It was through the generosity of a family that had lost these 4 family members of Alzheimer's. And she approached Dr. McDaniel about running a clinical trial, because he was presenting some very encouraging anecdotal responses of people with Alzheimer's and Parkinson's. For your listeners who maybe don't understand the way research works, it's not like the University of Miami ever said to me, "Here, John, I'm going to write you a check for $5 million. And then
Nice, right?
exactly, do all this research and make us proud, and don't just don't do anything that you shouldn't." It doesn't work that way. We as researchers are responsible for funding our own research, essentially, whether it's through NIH or other government agencies or
Right.
foundations or even individuals. So in this case, we had a very generous individual who gave us this money to do this research. But again, going back to the study, because we were bound, this lady asked us to please conduct the trial on people with Alzheimer's. We were bound to do that. And of course we did. And so we chose the sickest of the sick. In other words, we didn't look for people with mild cognitive impairment who were on the way to dementia, or people that were just newly diagnosed with Alzheimer's. They had to have been diagnosed at least for 1 year with Alzheimer's, and they had to be at the moderate to severe disease level.
Mm-hmm.
And those are the folks that Big Pharma cares normally nothing about.
Yeah.
They're considered to be lost causes already from the pharmacology paradigm.
Yeah.
So we enrolled these folks in a 1-year intervention. Unfortunately, we didn't have the funding to draw blood only at baseline in 12 months. We didn't have the money for 3, 6, or 9, but we did do the cognitive assessment at baseline, 3, 6, 9, and 12. So we did every quarter, we had them come in for the assessment. And then in addition to the neurocognitive assessment at those time points, we ran a whole host of assessments with cytokines, growth factors, T cell subsets, B cell subsets. We looked at a wide range of biomarkers to help explain, hopefully, what would happen on the cognitive side.
Right.
As we're running the study, it was interesting, and I share this little anecdote because I think it's important, but as we were beginning to talk about running the study, we got like a lot of really heavy skepticism from the psychiatrist at the center where most of the Alzheimer's patients were that we enrolled in the study. And he said, we really only do pharmacology here, but you guys have money. We have a lot of patients. We don't think this formula will do anything for you, but we're happy to participate and collaborate. And Dr. Reg, he came into town. He came to Miami. He lives in the Dallas area. He came to town for the first in-person meeting with the center, with the team. And I looked at him like, wow, that was a really gutsy thing for this guy to say.
Negative.
Yeah, it was very negative and just very skeptical.
Right.
Hello, these people don't have any help otherwise. We're actually,
let's try anything.
exactly. We're actually offering you something that may potentially help based on some of these anecdotal responses that we had already collected to that date. So anyway, we start running the study and we're enrolling people sequentially. We can't just enroll everybody all at once, but as we get the first 5 or 6 or 7 people enrolled in the study, I start getting phone calls to my office, and it's both caregivers and staff, and they're calling me up and they're saying that their loved one, after being on the product for a few months, is now doing things that he or she hasn't done in some cases in years.
Wow.
We're even getting the staff calling me. I'll never forget one of the clinical coordinators. He called me one time after the oldest subject we had in the study. She was 93. I think she had Alzheimer's for about 11 years. Very impaired person who did not speak at all and was in a wheelchair when the study started. At one of the, I think it was, I'd have to go back and double check. I think it was the 3-month assessment. She came walking in one day and she called him by his first name. Yes.
Wow. That's crazy.
He started crying like a baby. He could not believe that this lady who previously was in a wheelchair and never even spoke actually remembered his first name and walked in there to be there for that follow-up assessment. So we were getting all these kinds of reports, and I get chill bumps every time I tell this story just because of the human aspect of conducting this study. And we're getting all these really positive responses, and all this stuff is happening as we're running the study. And it took us a couple of years to run all the subjects and then, of course, get all the data, have it entered, and all the analyze it, exactly, all that stuff. So it was a long process. This was not an easy study to run. But as we're finishing and I'm getting ready to start data analysis, I tell Dr. McDaniel, I feel good about this. We'll see what the statistics show. And sure enough, we look at the neurocognitive assessment. Now, the ADAS-Cog is widely considered to be the gold standard of assessing cognitive function in dementia studies. It's probably been published in, I don't know, at least a couple of thousand articles. If you go to PubMed and type in ADAS, you'll pull up literally thousands of articles. But anyway, we were running that, and sure enough, at the 9 and 12 months follow-up compared to baseline, it was clinically and statistically significant improved.
Wow, that's great.
I mean, it blew me away. It was beyond anything we expected. And when I saw that, it nearly brought tears to my eyes. I was just so blown away that all this hard work that we'd put into this actually showed. It was validating a lot of the phone calls and messages that I had seen along the way, but it was just so amazing to see these results as we're running the stats. So that was the first thing we looked at. And then the second thing was, of course, the idea of what was going on with these inflammatory markers, and then of course the immune function aspect. So secondly, we showed a lowering of TNF alpha and VEGF. That was probably also the first time that had ever been published in people with moderate to severe Alzheimer's. Those are classically looked at in heart disease and cancer, but we lowered both of those markers. We showed an overall improvement in the CD4 to CD8 ratio, which is very important for all of us, not just for people with Alzheimer's, but as we age, our helper cells and our cytotoxic cells to be in a good balance and a good ratio. finally, we showed just under a 300% increase in the CD14 cells, which are a marker of adult stem cells.
That's great. That's amazing.
I'm telling you, so as we were looking at all this information, it was mind-boggling. Again, we were optimistic, but we had no idea what we really had on our hands. And so when you put that whole picture together, you have the only thing that makes sense on the clinical side, unless you're the biggest skeptic in the world and just say, oh, those people had spontaneous healing, some ridiculous response like that. The only thing that made sense to us was we had lowered inflammation, we had improved overall immune function, but more importantly, we had increased that adult stem cell production process, which again, remember, these were people on average 79.9 years of age, very old folks. But the only way it made sense for us that the clinical improvement occurred was that the adult stem cells migrated out to the brain and in some generic fashion were involved with neuroplasticity, whether repairing damage, creating new neurons, new synapses, whatever the case may be. That's a bit speculative. We don't really know. But the only thing that supports the clinical change had to be something on the physical change. There's no other way to put it into context or describe it. So that was just, I was on top of the world. We published that first paper in 2013. It's hard to believe that's been
10 years. Yeah.
10 years ago. I know. And I was at that point in my academic career, I was on top of the world. I was so hopeful. And I thought, oh my gosh, I've got something here that either NIH or Alzheimer's Association will really jump on and help me extend. So I tried several proposals to those agencies to get more funding, and we got that much in response.
Zero.
We got crickets in response. And that was the beginning of the end for me for my academic career. It really was very apparent, and without question to me, at that point, I decided I'm not doing pharmacology, I'm not doing genetics. These people may talk a good game publicly about their support of nutrition or the role that nutrition plays in all this, but they don't care. I'm submitting proposals to these agencies, not just with an idea, but an idea with data. It's actually
nothing in response.
Exactly. It's something that actually can help. And compare our results to the 5 FDA approved drugs for dementia or another nutritional, hyperbaric oxygen, sound therapy, acupuncture, you name it, just compare. And I don't mean to sound arrogant or like I'm bragging about this, but just take our data and compare it to any other study out there. And even still, after 10 years, it's unparalleled. There's really nothing else shown even anything close. We ended up publishing 2 more papers after that as we were deciding or trying to figure out what we were going to do next. There were other articles coming out about brain-derived neurotrophic factor and its importance for memory and neuroplasticity and cognitive function. So we ended up doing 2 more secondary analyses looking at the relationships between BDNF and the cognitive measures in one paper and in the immune measures in another paper. We got 2 more papers out of those analyses. Those were not, to me, quite as exciting. We showed that the formulation helped to increase BDNF non-statistically significantly, but still there were some interesting findings in there. Again, I wasn't as excited about that, but this fourth paper, this fourth paper that we just got accepted for publication, I'm actually pretty excited about that because it's again information that, again, without sounding like I'm bragging, is very novel, especially within the Alzheimer's population. I had an idea, this is going back about a year ago, to look at more about inflammation because we had written a couple of review papers, one on cognitive function and one on immune function with different nutrients and phytonutrients. And I came across a vitamin D paper that referred to something that they had created in their paper called an inflammatory index. And so
I'm sorry, you cut out for a second. Could you repeat that last thing that you said? Inflammatory index?
An inflammatory index.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. It was a homemade, if you will, index of looking at the relationship between some different cytokines and growth factors. And I said, we collected all those. Let me see if we have anything useful here. So I tried creating this index within my own data set. It didn't really turn out to be anything. But as I was reading more about what they were proposing as something that was important, I read, as you do this, you read one paper and then it leads you to 2 or 3 more. And
Right down the road.
exactly, you go down this road and then the next thing you've read 50 papers. Anyway, in a few subsequent papers, I ended up reading about the balance between the Th1 and the Th2 components of the immune system. And so on the Th1, you have the pro-inflammatory side, and then on the Th2, you have the anti-inflammatory side. And then looking at how those relationships are very impactful for things like cancer and heart disease and HIV in particular, even rheumatoid arthritis and MS, but nothing about Alzheimer's. I spent hours looking in PubMed, trying to find something about where it has been characterized, these Th1 to Th2 ratios in people with Alzheimer's. I could not find one paper. I asked one of our co-authors, I said, would you please do the same, do your own lit search, don't do the same I did, but look for this yourself. See if you can find anything about the Th1 to Th2 ratios and if it's ever been characterized in Alzheimer's before. He couldn't find anything either.
Amazing.
So I was like, interesting.
You're like, oh, light bulb.
Exactly. Light bulb came on, a new idea. Sure enough, I put these ratios together. We had the exact same cytokines and growth factors from another study in people with healthy adults. So it was the perfect opportunity to compare these two groups. I kid you not, the data are mind-boggling. The people with Alzheimer's are so Th1 dominant, and then comparing them to the people that are healthy, otherwise not any kind of active disease, all of their ratios were very close to unity. So almost like perfect balance between the Th1 and the Th2 components. So you have, that's the kind of the first part of the story. First of all, characterizing it, then comparing it to healthy adults, then seeing what happens over the 12-month intervention. 5 out of the 6 ratios go back toward balancing, although not anywhere near close to unity, but at least going in the right direction, not becoming or not staying so Th1 dominant. And then the cherry on top of the cake was that the change in the rebalancing was correlated with improved cognitive function.
That's great.
Turned out to just be a beautiful paper. And
yeah.
This one was just accepted for publication in the last month or so. So
congratulations. That's wonderful.
Thank you. This will be a brand new paper that we'll, start promoting and talking about in subsequent research. But there probably, if I had nothing better to do with my life than running a business, I could probably just, because our data set is so rich with information, I could probably just mine that data set for the rest of my life, coming up with new questions to try to answer. But even though I'm not and I left academics, it's been about 6.5 years ago full time now, after, again, what I mentioned about the challenges of fundraising. So academic publishing is not really it's probably not even in my top 10 of priorities at the moment, but nonetheless, because of what I said earlier about credibility and doing things the right way, I always want to have a science base to my business, and making sure that anything that I propose as something beneficial has at least some amount of science to back up what I'm saying. I don't want to just, make statements or comments that have no backing or no.
Right. Yeah, no, that's totally understandable for sure.
So it's very important for me to continue publishing, and I still mentor the occasional undergrad student or medical student, and we usually end up writing papers together. So that's very important to me. But yeah, and I'm sorry again if I'm being so long-winded about any one topic, but just circling all the way back to your initial question about Alzheimer's. I mean, again, don't take Lewis's word for it. Anybody that is wondering what I've just said and how I've described these results, just go to PubMed yourself. Go to pubmed.gov. Start typing in your own search terms about Alzheimer's and any treatment for cognitive dysfunction or lack of cognitive ability, and I'm certain you're not going to find anything that would compare to what we've showed with our allopolysaccharide formula that we now call Daily Brain Care. I'm just so proud of that work. Again, it's been the pinnacle so far, and I hope that doesn't mean that I'm now on the other side going down. I hope.
No, I'm sure that's not true.
I hope I'm still going upward and onward, but it is very challenging. People will sometimes ask me, well, are you still trying to do research? And I'm like, I would love to. It's always a matter of money.
It's not endless pocketbook.
I have plenty of ideas, plenty of questions that I want to answer, but it's always a matter of money. And oh, by the way, you can, with all due respect to my friends who are or colleagues who are bench scientists, people working with cells or tissues or animals. And that's obviously very hard work too. I'm not saying it's not, but comparing that work to enrolling human beings in clinical trials,
It's a lot different.
it's a whole different ballgame.
Totally.
It's expecting people to be compliant, do what they're supposed to do for the intervention, show up on time to assessments, be responsible, all these things, and life happens. So it's a lot to deal with when you're running clinical trials in humans compared to just testing cells or tissues or animals in a very controlled environment or circumstance.
Yeah, very different.
So, totally different. Yes. But I do, my goal, and I thought for a while I was going to, after leaving academics, I was going to continue looking for either some very wealthy person who had a lot of money who would say, here, I've had somebody die of cancer or heart disease or diabetes. Let me help you out here. I'm going to write you a $5 million check. Go nuts. I was in that mindset for a while. And I guess that's probably because I was in academics for so long that I had that idea of constantly fundraising. But now I've decided I'm just going to make my own company as successful as I can. And I'm going to fund the research myself. I'm not asking anybody for anything at this point. I just want to build my business to the point where I can do all these things myself. It's going to take me longer, obviously, to get there, but that's, right. That's my intention now. But if I can jump to the multiple sclerosis research, if you'd like to hear about that, as we know, that's the big three of neurodegeneration, obviously the third being Parkinson's. So with multiple sclerosis, obviously it's not as nearly, let's say, as devastating as Alzheimer's. I think people in general live a lot longer with multiple sclerosis, but nonetheless, from a conventional medical perspective, it's still, you've got all these scientists and physicians scratching their head about what in the world to do for people. And then you can manage some of the functionality symptoms a bit better than you can for people with Alzheimer's and dementia, but still you've got a very difficult to treat disease that doesn't really have a lot of answers from the conventional side. So we ran very much, let's call it a sister design, if you will, to the Alzheimer's study. So we looked at most of the same biomarkers, all those cytokines, growth factors, T cells, B cells, all those different subsets. We looked at obviously a different quality of life battery, since cognition is not as significant in MS as it is in Alzheimer's. The issue is really more about functionality, right? And quality of life. And so the battery was definitely much different. But again, it was the same paradigm where we drew blood at baseline in 12 months, and then we did all the quality of life stuff at baseline 3, 6, 9. So one of the fascinating things to me that I learned as we're running this trial was that people with people with MS, the number one thing they die from is not actually MS, it's actually infection.
Interesting.
So they have a lot of infections, again, due to this dysregulated immune system and
T cells.
Exactly. And so they end up spending a lot of time in urgent care centers, hospitals, dealing with all these infections. And then, so being the number one cause of mortality in people with MS, it's obviously a very big deal. And oh, by the way, it also costs a lot of money. Right. So, exactly. So we went from showing the subjects had on average, eight infections at baseline to 2.5 infections at 12 months. Just a huge change in their infection.
Yeah, that's a huge change.
Huge number. So we were really proud of that finding. And then very similar to the findings in Alzheimer's, although a bit different, again, because people tend to lump MS in the autoimmune category in addition to being neurodegeneration. So it's got multiple things going on there. But we showed a very nice change in both some of the inflammatory markers and in the immune function markers. And then quality of life, again, just across the board, whether it was functioning. Now, I mentioned the ADAS is the gold standard for cognition in dementia studies. A measure called the FAMS is the gold standard for functioning in MS studies. So again, wildly statistically significant from baseline to 12 months. We looked at measures of quality of life. Both of those were wildly statistically significant. We looked at the Beck Depression Inventory, a very nice marker of depressive symptoms. It's not used to diagnose depression. For symptomatology, that also improved.
Yeah.
And then, excuse me, we had a homemade marker of all the different symptoms that go into MS, and that one was also very statistically significantly improved over the 12 months. So again, just,
that's great.
These were results that just blew us away. And we also were writing a sister paper from the MS data set from this new Th1, Th2 phenomenon that we described in Alzheimer's.
Mm-hmm.
Actually been some work done in MS previously, but it's still pretty limited, I would say, compared to other general immune function research in MS. So we're trying to have that paper finished by the end of the year, and hopefully we will. We're mostly through with it, but hopefully we'll have that finished by the end of the year.
Nice. You got a little bit of time.
Yeah, we still have a few more weeks, but we feel pretty good about getting that thing knocked out by the end of the year. And so that'll be the third paper. We published 2 papers from the MS study. So in combination, we'll have, hopefully by sometime next year, we'll have a total of 7 papers that we've published from both our Alzheimer's and our MS studies. That again, I don't think I've emailed these articles to you. I have summaries of all of them on the website. Of course, I don't want to violate copyright or anything, so I don't put the PDFs of the actual articles on our website, but I'm happy to share those with you, obviously. And if you have, I know you mentioned you have a lot of women listeners who have concerns about neurodegeneration in general and prevent it. So I'd be happy to share those articles with you if you'd like me to email those to you. And then,
that's great. Yeah. And we can find, the listeners can find those on your website. That's what you're mentioning. Yeah. And we can, it's a great time to mention your website, Dr. Lewis. Yeah. So tell us a little bit about, we backtracking to your career. So you moved from the academic world into starting your own business, and tell us how like that transition, and that is like part of the website. That's why I'm talking, moving to that transitional conversation. So tell us about that, and then tell us about your website, and tell us about the main product that you created from the polysaccharides that's really been helping with brain function.
Sure, I'd be happy to, and thank you for that segue. So drlewisnutrition.com is our primary website. We have another website too, dailybraincare.com. That's really more just strictly a sales portal, if you will. It's not really much for information content, but I've spent, gosh, it's been now a couple of years really putting a lot of material on drlewisnutrition.com. So we have a lot of lay articles, we have blog posts, we have, of course, podcasts that I'm doing with folks like yourself. We have a lot of testimonial videos. We have product reviews, even a very extensive FAQs. A lot of times people ask me about just dietary supplements in general. So I spend a lot of time just really making if I do say so myself, a pretty elaborate FAQ section. So I think that's important to help people understand. But transitioning from academics to business, I felt like besides just being real, going from like the top of the mountain to into the valley of despair, just being so frustrated that I couldn't get more money to extend my academic research career, and then really just doing my own self-inventory and saying, do I want to end up so-and-so with the lab next down the hall that's been here for 40 years and now he's going on 80 years old? I couldn't see myself doing that.
Like, I need to do something different.
Yeah, I mean, it's just time to move on. And again, I don't mean to sound arrogant. It's not to say that I couldn't become or continue to become a better scientist and learn more. I just felt like I had a very strong message that needed a wider audience and a broader appeal. And a lot of scientists, with all due respect, they're not very good in front of a camera, or they just come across as very dull or boring, and they have no they couldn't even spell the word marketing, let alone know anything about it. And I don't consider myself to be any sort of marketing genius by any stretch of the imagination. However, I really, as I'm sure you can probably tell by this point, I'm very passionate about what I believe in and what the work that I've done. And again, I just think it's so important, and it's such an opportunity to help people. So I felt being a businessman, being an entrepreneur, running my own little, whatever you want to call it, my own little business, I felt like I had a greater opportunity to eventually spread a message that I would not have if I had stayed in academics, because in academics, I was working 80 hours a week. And every time you get a new grant or a new little chunk of money, you immediately have to start planning the next year or two down the road, because once that little pool of money runs out, you have to replace it.
It's not an endless fund.
Exactly. You're just, everything can be a rat race, but especially in academics, when you're tied up in that funding game, that is truly a major rat race that after 20 years, I couldn't do it anymore. I was between being burned out and dejected, I was just done with it. So Daily Brain Care was the product that originated out of all this work that Dr. McDaniel and I and our colleagues conducted. We just spent so much effort running those 2 trials, and you think about, oh, those are just two studies. I can count two fingers on one hand. What's the big deal about that? But really, when you think about running studies with such complex patient populations and dealing with those folks, especially with the Alzheimer's folks, who all of them had a caregiver. Some of the MS folks had a caregiver, although most of them didn't, but still just difficult research to conduct. And so I'm very proud of all that work and how Daily Brain Care originated out of that. And then now being in business and being able to really have much more flexibility with going to conferences or having opportunity to speak to folks like yourself and just being able to really talk this message. Now, obviously, as we mentioned earlier about FTC and making sure that you're always compliant, and obviously that's a very important part of this too. I never, again, want to be construed as someone making promises or saying, oh, this is a miracle. Sometimes people will say, that sounds miraculous. I'm like, no, there's nothing miraculous about this.
There's proven science behind it.
Exactly. This is a very science-based, science-driven approach. And oh, by the way, these raw materials are exactly what our cells want to function properly. It's just simply, this is the bioengineering of life. There's nothing miraculous about what happens to us once we become a human. Maybe you can debate what happens before that. Certainly that's debatable. But once we're here, once we're alive, it's just simply providing those materials to function properly after we provide oxygen, then vitamins and minerals, and then all these other things that our cells need. Man, that's just enabling our physiology. That's really what it comes down to. And as I've shared today, with what we know about these polysaccharides, you just have such an opportunity to really add on top of a good diet and other things that we should supplement with. For example, vitamin D. Obviously, as we have a population of people that are vitamin D deficient or insufficient. Yep. That's obviously a huge problem. But some of these key things that I like to talk about in relationship to taking Daily Brain Care every day, to me, this is just, it's dynamic, and I see it time and time again. And I'd like to also mention, sometimes people ask me, well, who is there, for example, are there any adverse effects with medications? I have yet to see any medication where Daily Brain Care has any kind of negative interaction.
That's great.
We have a 3.5-year-old daughter, my wife and I, when we started introducing solid foods to her at 6 months, I started giving her the polysaccharides. I started mixing it in with her liquids. My mother, who is, don't tell her I said that I told you her age, but she's in her 80s. My mother's been on it for 15 years. I've been taking it for about 10 years now. My wife's been on it a couple of years. She's a bit more of a stubborn case, but I finally got her over the hump. But I bring up my family for a couple of reasons. One, because obviously I wouldn't want to sell anything that I wouldn't take myself, or that I wouldn't give to my child or my mother or my wife. But also the fact that this is for all of us, cradle to grave. Literally, we need good nutrition. And again, I don't care what your dietary philosophy is, you're not getting them from food. So we all can benefit from these polysaccharides, and it's not very expensive. It's, in my perspective, it's very cost effective for the benefit that you get out of it, for no risk, literally no risk. It's just an incredible opportunity to have benefit to your health every day. And the other thing I'd like to say too, that was not exactly related, but just to make sure that people are clear, is we chose the name Daily Brain Care for our flagship product for really two reasons. One, because as you now know, we have our own science that we conducted that we use to make the claims on the label. For me, that's very important. And number two, again, as you well know, the area of brain health, let's call it this very large umbrella term, again, from children with ADHD and autism all the way to end-of-life neurodegeneration, and then all of us in the middle who have mood disorder, concussion syndrome, TBI, PTSD, all these other things. So many things are related to the health of the brain today. And yet so many of those same things have such very little opportunity for helping people from the conventional perspective. So for me, it was an easy choice to name this product Daily Brain Care. However, because of, again, the way nutrition works, the body really doesn't care what something is called on the label. It's whether or not you're providing it something that it could utilize. So these polysaccharides, we know every 30 plus trillion cells in our body can utilize these polysaccharides. So we could have named the product anything: daily heart care, daily immune care, daily nerve care. I don't want to be misleading people when we think of just the brain in this case. Again, it's obviously time and time again, we've shown that for other things. For example, like one of the first things that people will report as being like an early benefit of this is better sleep. So,
That's a great benefit.
again,
Yeah.
we have a population full of insomniacs today. So being able to help people sleep better is obviously very important.
Yes.
People have all sorts of GI issues. I had a lady who was having very severe IBS constipation for years. She was getting ready to spend like a couple of $1,000 on a really elaborate functional medicine workup. And I said, here, before you go spend all that money, just try daily brain care. Within a few days, she said she was pooping like a champ. It's just,
There you go.
there's so many different ways that these polysaccharides can help. And ultimately, if you want to look out maybe a couple of years down the road, I do intend to have different products for different major organ systems, but they will all have in common the polysaccharides. I'm just going to tweak the formula based on differences that perhaps make sense to project or to target different organs. But as I've said, I think to me in general, nutrition is systemic, not specific. So I don't have any intention of being a standard process or a premier research labs that's got 400 or 500 products. I don't want to do that, but I would put up the polysaccharides against, you name it, curcumin, ginseng, saffron, ginkgo biloba, vitamin D, especially in the cognitive world. And that I'll send you that review paper on cognition and immune function as well.
Yeah, that'd be great. Thank you.
It's a very nice, you're welcome. Actually, those are two papers. Those are very nice papers to have in your library because we reviewed, I think in one, 21 different compounds and then the other one, 23 or 24. But those are things that, again, we can choose some targeted information for marketing purposes. But in reality, I don't know that ultimately it makes so much difference in terms of having, again, such a huge repository of different products. I think you can be much more specific than that, and you can make a lot more progress with just really what I would think is a more focused approach. I'll say it that way.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you so much for sharing the second study that you did with the MS, because that's an important piece where a lot of people are looking for solutions. Again, like you mentioned with Alzheimer's, there's not a lot of solutions out there, right? So that's
right.
Great to have another solution. And thank you so much for joining us today. As we're going to be wrapping up, you shared your website, share how people can find you and follow you. What's your social media handles?
So yes, so again, our main website for information, and of course our store too, is drlewisnutrition.com. That's Dr. no period, Lewis, Lewis, nutrition.com. And then all of our social media handles are at drlewisnutrition.com. So Facebook, Instagram, YouTube. We're kind of getting started on TikTok, although I don't know, politically that may not make so much sense anymore, but definitely Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. You can find a lot of information, a lot of the videos we've recorded and published under Dr. Lewis Nutrition. And if you go to our website, we have our email address, our phone number. I always take time to help people as much as I can, and anybody can contact me through those means as well.
That's great. And one last question for you, Dr. Lewis. If you had an unlimited budget, what would you do right now to make the biggest impact on the planet? We've been talking a lot about budget today, so I wonder what your answer is going to be.
What a great question. So if I had an unlimited budget, I probably would hire a lot more marketing help because again, without sounding arrogant, I just feel like the message that I have related to our research is so important. And we're limited because we're a small company, and so we don't have a big marketing budget at this point. And for me, the success of what we're doing is all about marketing, which essentially just means spreading the word.
Right.
So I wish I had an unlimited budget to devote to marketing, and then of course I would put some percentage of that toward a new clinical trial or two as well, just because, again, it's so important and no one's getting any younger. So the quicker we could start our next studies, the better. And hopefully we'll still be around for a long time to be able to enjoy them and benefit from the knowledge gained. But for me right now, Dr. LuLu, marketing is the most important thing. So I would love to have more resources to put toward marketing to be able to help build this momentum and spread the word.
That's great. I love that. Yes, I think that's super important, as you've talked about today, the impact that your studies have done with the polysaccharides on the planet. So let's get more people tuned in and listening to the Genetic Genius so they can tune into you and find out more about what you're
Exactly.
doing and follow you and check out your daily brain care. Thank you again, Dr. Lewis, for joining us today. I really loved our conversation. I learned so much.
Thank you so much. I'll be happy to come back anytime if you like.
Okay, thank you so much.